we have a story from reporter Mariya Karimjee.
The one that we worked on with Mariya Karimjee.
Mariya Karimjee grew up in Pakistan.
It comes to us from Mariya Karimjee. Okay, here's Mariya.
Consume so much more than you think you need to be consuming. Break it down structurally. Figure out why it works. How is the actual story working? Journalism does two things. Number one, it informs the public, right? And then the other thing it does is it tells the story well. I moved to the US when I was 11. And I moved to the US without my parents really telling us that's what we were doing. Once we got to America, I started school there. And for a while, it was a little bit tentative. Are we gonna stay? What are we gonna do? Ultimately, I finished all of junior high and high school in the US. We lived outside of Houston in a small suburb in the greater Houston area called Cypress. I went to a small liberal arts college for only women in Western Massachusetts. It was what we call a suitcase school, which meant that you went there and you stayed there and there was nothing, no towns, no real nothing around it. And I knew I wanted to be a journalist from a fairly young age. So the way the story works is that when I was 6 and people would be like, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? I was still living in Karachi at 6, right? I wanted to be a bus driver because I really liked talking to people. And I was like, what a great way. Everyone's gonna get on my bus. I'm gonna be able to say hello to them. I'm gonna make conversation. This is an excellent job. And when I told my dada the story, he was like, let's think of other jobs where you get to talk to other people that's not driving a bus. And his suggestion was journalism.
The nationwide poll for a new National Assembly and government leadership follows the bloodiest election campaign in Pakistan's history. For weeks, militants and extremists bombed, shot at, killed, kidnapped.
The 2013 elections are remarkable in Pakistan because they were the first ever democratic transfer of power, right? So one democratically elected government transferred power to another democratically elected government, right? Technically, we have seen that happen again since. Heavy emphasis on technically. At the time, Karachi was considered super, super, super dangerous, so there were no foreign reporters here. Also, because the only passport I have is a Pakistani passport, right? I was able to vote, so I was able to get into polling booths, which foreign journalists would not have been able to do. And so I positioned myself as the Karachi stringer for a whole bunch of different organizations at the time. So I was working for one organization, and then I was being syndicated for Salon, and CNN, and one other organization that I can't remember, maybe PRI's, The World blog. Osama bin Laden got assassinated here, when they killed him here, right? And just whatever, let's not use the word assassinated. When Osama bin Laden was killed by the US in Pakistan, as a Pakistani reporter, I should have gone and done follow-up interviews, but I didn't because I didn't want my ethnicity to be my reporter identity. If I'd gone to areas of New York where there were a lot of Pakistani immigrants, I feel like I could have gotten really good reporting out of it, but I just opted not to do that because I was no, I want to write stories that are not about being Pakistani. I want to write stories that are not about immigration. So unlike other Pakistani reporters, I was this is what America understands about Pakistan, and this is how I can monetize it really easily to make it digestible for them. Writing about labor rights abuses at Gadani, right, was great. Writing about drug culture in Pakistan, where everyone thinks of it as a super conservative country, right? Something I really enjoy. In my sophomore year at Mount Holyoke, my parents were like, we are done trying to get a green card. We want to move back. I was a dependent on their visa, so when they decided to leave, I also lost my visa. The parents that I knew in the US were not the same parents that I had here. They were very protective of me. I had to learn how to wear a shalwar kameez properly, and I just never felt comfortable. And we came back in June, and guys, I had grown up in Houston. If you told me in Houston I was not gonna be able to handle Karachi ki garmi, I would have laughed at you guys. because Houston is not a particularly fun place in the summer. I could not handle the heat. I moved back in with my dada dadi. I had to live by their rules. I had small jobs from the time I was 13 onwards. I was living with my parents in high school, but I wasn't getting pocket money from them. I had my own money. I spent so much time at a bookstore in my senior year that they just gave me a job. They were literally just come work here, right? I had a full-time job. I was paying for my own petrol money for my car. All of that stuff was happening, and I came here and I couldn't drive myself anywhere. I had no friends. I enjoyed writing. Becoming a fiction writer, becoming a novelist, etc., was not a career path that made sense to a lot of Desi families. But wanting to become a journalist definitely made sense to Desi families. So even though they were okay, we have no idea what the hell you're studying in college, sociology, pata nahi kya hai, knowing that I was always going to do journalism was very helpful, because it's a technical career, like a doctor or an engineer, but not. And in 2008, the internet had just kind of taken over and lots of job opportunities existed, and no one was worried that media was dying in the way that we are always constantly worried about it now.
You lost a lot.
Kind of a couple of years into my career, where I was interviewing women who had killed their own babies. In the middle of an interview, a woman's telling me her story and I started crying. And no one ever tells you what to do if you are crying, but then the person you're interviewing is telling you a horrible story, just straight facts, no emotion, right? And I came back and I was maybe I'm really bad at this. Maybe right? And I remember emailing a professor and being I don't know that I can continue doing this job, because she told me about this terrible thing she did, and I started crying. And the professor was the day that you don't feel empathy for the people you're interviewing is the day you actually need to quit, right? The fact that you're feeling the feelings makes you better at this job. You should worry on the flip side of that.
En revanche, elle cultive un goût particulier pour les tout petits plaisirs. Plonger la main au plus profond d'un sac de grains. Briser la croûte des crèmes brûlées avec la pointe de la petite cuillère.
Don't save things for when the time is gonna come, right? You get a really good bar of chocolate, eat it when you're ready to eat it. Don't wait being one day I'll be worth this really good bar of chocolate. The same thing is true of movies, same thing is true of books. I think about this a lot. When I die, do I want people to be she was a brilliant writer, or do I want people to be she was a really good friend? I want both of those things, but I think that I would be really upset if people only said that she's a good writer and didn't say that she's a good friend. I wouldn't be upset if people only said she's a good friend and no one mentioned my writing.
Today's story came from reporter Mariya Karimjee.
Mariya Karimjee. Her story came to us through a podcast called The Heart.
Make sure to keep your ears peeled for Pieces by Mariya.
Thanks, guys, for listening.